the beat, the beat, the beat, the beat, the beat. Real authentic conversation.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Offbeat Podcast. I'm your host, Jorge Ambriz, and I'm so excited to bring today's episode to you, man. And before we continue, man, I just want to give a shout out to Chris the Tent, man. He's right there in Cali Mesa. We're going to put his information right there, man. Thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. We appreciate your support, and go check him out. He's right there in Cali Mesa, California. And but today's episode, man, I'm so excited. I'm so pumped. We got a special guest in the house, Darlene.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Darlene, man, I'm so excited, man, to have you on the show today. We have an awesome topic that I think a lot of people are going to have fun watching and listening to. And we're going to be talking about toxic relationships.
Yep. And it's not just relationships, as in like romantic relationships, but it's also friendships, business. But I think for the majority part, it might be towards romantic relationships.
Yeah. So, Darlene, why don't you introduce yourself and then also let people know what you do?
Okay. Well, I'm Darlene. I go by Didi, my nickname. So I do a lot. I go to Cal Baptist University, completing my master's in counseling. I'm also an internship at a early start and head start program, kind of applying what I'm learning in school as a mental health consultant. I'm also in the Army Reserve, and I'm also a personal trainer at Self-Made Training Facility.
Man, you have a lot on your plate.
I do a lot.
Yeah.
I do a lot. Yeah.
And you have a beautiful girl.
I have a 4-year-old daughter. Yeah.
Shout out to your daughter.
Yeah. She's awesome.
Yeah. No, kids are cool. Kids are awesome, man. Sometimes. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's okay. We're gonna go with that. Sometimes, man.
They're funny, man. My son's actually here in the studio too
very
with
sweet.
us. So he came to watch the Offbeat podcast. And but man, I'm so excited for today's episode because we're gonna get right to it, and we're gonna get to toxic relationships and toxic traits. And like you said, it's not just going to be applicable to romantic relationships, but which we know it is a big part to do with it, but it also has to do with friendships, things like that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about why you're passionate about this topic, and, why is it that because you're even studying, right? Counseling. So what is it that kind of took you to be passionate about this subject?
Well, I started to be more passionate about it because I did have a lot of toxic behavior in relationships, friendships, just all around, thinking, that it was okay to hurt people, like even thinking it was funny. I have friends that think it's funny to be toxic. And this last year and during this year as well, I made an effort to just change all of that. I just did not want to be toxic anymore.
Yeah, so so there were certain experiences in your life. And what kind of experiences, if you're okay sharing, that kind of led you to see, man, you know what, this is not healthy?
I think it was just like having toxic relationships, all the time. It was just like I just found myself in these toxic situations. And I had to take the time to think, okay, it is not the guys, it's me. It's me choosing this relationship. Me choosing to behave in a certain way, to react a certain way to their behavior. So I think that's what played a part to that.
Yeah. And do you have, would you say that your childhood or early on played a lot to do with?
Oh, yeah.
With how you reacted to relationships later on?
Yeah. I don't want to be like I had daddy issues, but I think I had daddy issues.
I think we all have I think we've established that on Offbeat Podcast.
Let's be clear. Both males and females can have daddy and mommy issues. It's 100%, not just females. Okay.
100%. Yep.
So I had an ex-boyfriend when I was about 21, 22.
Okay.
Very toxic. I accepted a lot of his behavior. He was being very toxic towards me. It just felt normal. He was calling me names. He was always calling me the B word. At some point, he was telling me that he felt like hitting me. Wow. And sometimes I would not be doing anything at all, and he would just be like, I just want to hit you. So I felt like that was a sign that I was going to go towards an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And
starting to see the red flags.
Yeah. And I think that's why I was like, okay, I'm going to leave because I don't want to get hit, So I went to my dad and told him about that experience, because my dad also would call me the B word. He would call me, pig, and, a lot of harsh words. And, I told my dad about what this guy, how this guy was towards me. And he was like, no, you can't accept that. And I was like, well, the thing is, I thought it was normal because that's how you were towards me.
Yeah.
And that's how he was. I was living with him at the time.
Yeah.
He would call me the B word. He would call me a pig and all that stuff. And he's like, well, I could do that because I'm your dad. I'm like, I got really, upset. And I was like, no, you can't do that because you're my dad.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do that. I was like, it's reflecting in my relationship. And, I walked out. And after a couple of days, he called me and he was like, you know what, you're right. And he apologized and he's like, come over and let's talk in person.
Yeah.
And, he shared, he comes from a very traumatic childhood.
Yeah.
He was jumped into a gang. Like, he has a very OG gangster mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had a lot of experiences through that.
Yeah.
So he told me all the stories, everything he went through, from, I can't say too much, but just, even going to jail for reasons why he went to jail, and like the fear he had in him, why he was so defensive and all that stuff. So him saying sorry and telling me the reasons why he was like that allowed me to understand why he was like that, and towards us, and not to take it personal. Yeah. So that was the start of us building our relationship all over again.
So it was kind of like it's kind of what you needed. It was like the springboard that you needed at that moment to, because you saw what was happening in your personal relationship, with your boyfriend at that time. And then you saw that there's some negative traits, some red flags that are going up right there. And then you go to the kind of the source of what, you said, man, well, for so long I felt this was normal because it was coming from you. Yeah. A person that I love, the person that, gave me life, And so many times I think that, that's, again, it's not to channel the blame always to our parents, but it's just to us to understand that, and for us to also learn from that, that, what, words do matter. It
really does. Our relationships with our caregivers, especially early on, does reflect how our relationships are as adults. Yeah. And we really got to take the time to recognize that. Yeah. And not being afraid to show that emotion, Yeah. I think like your dad, I could probably relate to him a lot, that growing up, that was the guard. Yeah. It was a defense mechanism, we don't share our emotions. A real man doesn't talk about things. Yeah. A real man doesn't cry. A real man doesn't show when he's hurt, when he's abusive. A real man doesn't do those things, and those are all things that they're lies. Yeah. They really are, because we don't understand that if we don't begin to address those things, we're just going to continue in this cycle. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like how what I was saying too before. Like we do have to recognize like where the cycle starts. And I think when I decided that I no longer wanted to have relationships like that, I had to recognize, okay, where can I start to do some healing, where I can start to have more healthy relationships. Yeah. And I had to start with my dad. I had to start building a secure relationship with my dad. And we did make it a habit to call each other weekly when time allowed it, if we weren't busy. And we would just talk. Yeah. Even if it was 5 minutes, we would just talk. And my dad got really good at telling me, affirmations of my worth. And he never did that in the past. So he would tell me he loved me, and I was like his precious jewel, whatever the heck. But he was also calling me a B word. But now he's also like, now he's sticking with that, affirmations, telling me my worth. I talked to him about my guy problems, and he'd be like, heck no. And my dad helped me, put my foot down with stuff like that. So
he started, and there's no one better. I always say this, man. Sometimes the hurt people, once healed, once they start that journey of healing, are some of the best at being able to identify problems. I truly believe that, and our parents, I know it's hard. I know it was probably hard for him to hear that from you, say, hey, well, you used to do this to me. You used to call me this, so I thought it was normal. I don't think any parent, I know me as a parent, I know you as a parent, like, man, sometimes it's hard to swallow our ego.
Yeah, it really is. But you know what? I think we really have to listen to our kids when they tell us something, because I think one time I yelled at my daughter for leaving a mess, and it's not because she did something. I was just frustrated the whole day.
Yeah.
And then
which most of the time that's why.
And most of the time that's why. Nothing personal on the kids.
Yeah.
But I do talk to my daughter afterwards, and at the end of the day, and like I was like, oh, I'm sorry, Mommy was just frustrated. I tell her why. And I was like, I don't mean to make you cry. And she's like, yeah. She's like, Mommy, if you don't want me to cry, stop yelling at me. And I was like, dang, she has a point.
Yeah.
So
and that's so cool, man, because it's teaching them that they're able to express themselves.
Yeah.
Because I know growing up, that was never something that we were able to really do.
No.
It was, we would express ourselves, but yelling and crying.
Yeah. Or if we did cry, we'll get made fun of, right?
Yeah.
Or they'll tell you, oh, you shouldn't be crying, or you're so sensitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of toxic traits really do stem from, from our childhood, and they really start to reveal themselves once we start dating.
Yeah. It really does.
And talk about a little bit about that, about what kind of things started to show within you. I know you kind of shared a little bit about past boyfriend, but you want to get into a little bit more details as far as what kind of things would you see or would you start recognizing from yourself? They're like, yo, this is toxic.
I had a lot of, I have a lot of my dad's personality.
Okay.
Very like, I guess how you say it. Just a lot of his personality. Like I'm not, gangster or anything, but I had a lot of his personality where, I would say mean things. If you hurt me, I'm gonna say mean things. That's kind of how it was. Like if you hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you 10 times worse.
Yeah.
Not physically, but just with words.
Right.
I'm gonna bring you down here.
An eye for an eye.
Yeah.
Tooth for a tooth.
Yeah. And you know what? I would say it. Sometimes I'll say it to be funny. I would think it's funny that I'm hurting your feelings.
Yeah.
And I think how to recognize that that's not okay.
Yeah.
It was a defense mechanism for me. I didn't allow myself to react in a different way, in a more effective way.
Yeah.
So
It's like a survival mode.
It's a
survival mode. And I think that that's one of the things that, it's being so embraced now in culture. We kind of talked about this earlier about how, like toxica, it's
soy toxica. They're so proud of being toxic.
There's even songs now about la toxica.
La toxica.
And it is funny. Don't get me wrong. Like I laugh about it. I mess around with my friends about it. I even mess around with my wife about it. We'll be like, hey, why are you being so toxica today? You know what I mean? Or things like that. And we'll laugh and, but it's something that's being so embraced in culture nowadays, because I feel that nowadays, it's something that, well, I have these negative attributes. I have these negative things, but I'm using it to my advantage, and as long as I'm using it to my advantage and I'm getting what I want, then it's okay.
I think that's a very childish way to think, honestly. Because that's how kids start to throw like their temper tantrum.
Yeah.
I can't say it, but because they throw it expecting for you to give them what they want.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like toxic behavior. Like I'm gonna go be toxic and like I'm gonna get what I want, whether it's like the feeling of feeling more superior.
Yeah.
Whether it's an actual item, like I don't know what it is, but I think toxic behavior, I think people use that to feed into their own ego.
Yeah. And there's an unwillingness to accept that they need to change.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing, is that we do live in a culture that, doesn't want to accept responsibility sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's actually a real good point, because I think people don't realize that the toxic behavior requires more energy, more like it takes a lot more out of you than you realize. But also putting in the work takes a lot of energy too. I think people pick and choose their battle, whether they want to continue having this toxic lifestyle, or make the decision that you want to change. You want to just not have toxic behavior anymore.
Yeah. And that's so true. You pick your battle.
Yeah, you really have to pick your battle, and it's whether you want to continue that or just, choose to have a better lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's because regardless, it's going to be work.
Yeah.
You know, I that's one thing that I always tell people too. It's like, regardless, it's going to be work. You know,
Yeah.
whether you choose to be in a relationship, it's going to take work.
Exactly.
Even coming out of a relationship, it's going to take work, because if you, and I think that's the thing that sometimes people don't understand, is that, you know what, okay, if this relationship didn't work out, you know, I'm going to step away from this relationship, you know, instead of, you know, self-evaluating, you know, I get it. There's a level of self-evaluation that is healthy. There's an unhealthy and a healthy, I believe. Sometimes some people can get out of a relationship and they can get really bent out of shape, you know, where maybe something tragic did happen in that relationship, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a partner cheated. Maybe, you know, maybe there was some physical abuse, some verbal abuse. Maybe there was, you know, maybe it's just a mutual decision for both to leave. But I think a lot of people don't understand is that regardless, you invested months, sometimes even years into that person. And whether we know it or not, you know, good company or bad company, like, it does rub off on us.
It does.
You know, and sometimes we in a way we mourn these relationships once they're over. You know, we cry, we you know, we get sad about them. You know, we you know, a lot of times we hit the gym.
Yeah.
We're like, you know what, okay, I'm just gonna, and we think of bettering ourselves in terms, but we never really self-evaluate to see, okay, what is it that I need to do? What can I better in my own self? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I first want to say that you mentioned that you can mourn, like you're mourning after losing a relationship or getting out of a relationship. I just want to say you could also grieve a relationship. You could grieve for it and also acknowledge that relationship is no longer for you. And I think that's important to understand because sometimes when you're grieving, you're like, okay, maybe I made the wrong decision and maybe I should go back with them. And you start this cycle. So I want people to understand, like, it's okay to get out of a relationship and grieve for it.
Yeah.
Because like you said, you spent months, years with that person. A part of them is going to be with you.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, you definitely need that time to reflect on that relationship, how it hurt you, how it can probably carry on to your next relationship.
Yeah.
And think of ways that will lead towards healing instead of just jumping to the next relationship, because you're going to really carry that baggage on a lot.
Yeah.
Even if you take some time between dating and then you start dating another person, you can still kind of carry that baggage with you.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times that's what happens, right?
It happens.
We just carry on that baggage to new relationships.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think it takes communication. You have to communicate with that partner. You should have a secure partner that you can communicate that, you know, hey, you did this. I know it's not you, but this triggered me because my last relationship, it was just like that. And I don't want this to be in our relationship.
Yeah.
But I just want you to know that triggered me.
Yeah. And what helped you? What helped you personally to, after having, you know, some bad relationships in your own life, you know, what helped you? You mentioned that reconnecting and rekindling that relationship with your biological dad. But what else also kind of brought you to that point of being able to self-evaluate in a healthy way?
Growing in my relationship with God, that kind of both went together, growing with my worldly father and then my heavenly father. Those two kind of went together to where I can acknowledge my self-worth and my self-love and, you know, no longer want to like go through hurt.
Yeah, because that's huge. How can you heal or even learn your self-value, your self-worth, if you don't know where it stems from? Yeah. You know, right? I mean, it's something that I've struggled with so long because it was something I never, my self-worth was always in relationships, whether it was a friendship, whether it was a group of friends, whether it was with my gang at that time, or even after getting saved, you know, in church, you know, my value was based off what I did and who I was around with. But it never really, I can honestly say that I struggled with actually knowing who George was and my own self-worth. And I always kind of use this illustration. It's like if you have a Porsche.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a Porsche, they're beautiful vehicles, beautiful cars, beautiful machines.
Yes.
I hope to have one day.
One
Porsche,
day.
shout out to Porsche, sponsor us. But you know, you're not going to take a brand new Porsche, you know, to a Honda dealer. You know, you're not going to take it to, you know, a Toyota dealer, you know, to get it serviced, to get it checked out. You're going to the source. You're going to the manufacturer. You're going to the place where they are experts in that machine, in that vehicle. Why? Because, you know, you're not going to risk, you know, its originality, you know, for counterfeit parts or aftermarket parts.
Yeah.
And I believe that in life, that's what happens to us so many times through relationships, through friendships, and through dating, and through, you know, romances, and all these different things that we get into, you know, even professional, you know, sometimes we compromise so much of our originality that at the end, you know, we don't know who we truly are.
Yeah. I think it's important to get your identity from God.
Yeah.
And living according to the image of God. Because if you have your identity in, you know, the gym could close down. You saw what happened in COVID-19, you know, your relationship, what happens if they pass away? What happens if you break up? What happens if they're not here? You know, you're going to lose yourself. So, but finding your identity in God and knowing your worth through God is very important, because you're not going to lose yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna always feel whole.
Yeah. And that's what really makes relationships work. Is it's not two people coming together and completing themselves. You know, it's two people being whole, coming together, and then making their life together.
I love that. Honestly, when I had spent my time being single and reflecting and praying to God and being celibate and journaling, I made a prayer for my future spouse.
Okay.
I prayed that my future spouse was getting ready for me, you know, getting ready for our relationship. I prayed that my future spouse was also growing in his relationship with God.
Yeah.
And I listed, you know, personality traits that I wanted in my relationship too. And you know, when I started dating my now boyfriend, I went back to my journal, and it's wild. My prayer was answered in detail.
Yeah.
He when he was single, he was spending his time growing in his relationship with God. When we're going through conflict in our relationship, he prays to God and asks God to give him the wisdom that he needs so that he could be a better man to me.
Let's go. Yeah.
So I believe in that. It takes two people to have their own relationship with God, and then also develop a relationship together with God.
Yeah, 100%. Because you can only carry one. It's good to carry each other. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. You know, we if you love someone, you know, it should burden us to want to pick each other up. Yeah. When one is down, you know, one picks the other one up, you know. Yeah. But there's a certain level sometimes I think that we get confused, like, you know, when we're constantly picking up the slack for people, you know, and they're not doing anything for themselves. I think it's a combination of like, hey, I'm gonna pick up the slack for you, but exactly, you have to do the work. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to become wholesome, to become whole, because, you know, it's one thing like, hey, you know what? I have these toxic traits. If you recognize that there's toxic traits in our lives, if you recognize that there's red flags, but you're not working on them in your single life, you're not working on them, you know, with your friendships, you're not working on them. And I think too many times, like, culture has embraced it. Yeah. It's embraced it to say, this is who I am. This is how I am. This is what I've gotten away with. Yeah. You know, this is what I can get away with. I can get whatever I want. I can do whatever I want, you know, and it hasn't affected me up until now. But at the same time, you know, eventually, man, you know what? Those traits, man, they're gonna make or break us.
Yeah. I like that you said that some people say, this is who I am. that hurts me. Like when people say that, 'cause
Yeah.
you're not giving yourself a fighting chance.
Exactly.
You're allowing yourself to be identified as a toxic person.
Yeah.
And you're not giving yourself a fighting chance to do better for yourself,
Yeah.
for your loved ones, to be better at loving your friends and your family and, you know, your partner.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to not allow yourself to be that way.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself a fighting chance.
Yeah. You should want to change.
You should want to change.
Yeah.
You shouldn't accept, okay, this is who I am.
Yeah.
It's a conscious decision to want to make that change, to do better.
100%. And I think that, you know, reality TV has a lot to do with that. You know, I laugh about it because I love reality TV, man. That's what's funny.
Very addicting.
I love documentaries.
Yeah.
I love reality TV, you know, but like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, 90 Day Fiance.
Yeah.
You know, I recently watched this show, Dubai Bling, you know, where it's, you know, a bunch of super rich, you know, millionaires, billionaires probably, you know, out in Dubai. And it's just, some are housewives, some are, you know, but I was watching it, and what you constantly watch is that, you know, like, you know, let's be real, you know, like there's some beautiful women on these shows.
Yeah.
There's some beautiful wives, you know, some, you know, they're and they have these husbands that are okay, you know, they're average, you know, but they have a lot of money.
They have a lot of money.
They have a lot of money. But it's crazy when they get into these scenes sometimes where the wife or the woman, she gets like super toxic, you know, and
Throwing a tantrum.
yeah, like bad. And you see the guy and he's just like, okay, calm down.
Yeah.
You know, calm down.
Oh
Like,
my
you know,
goodness.
and I'm like,
Where's your self-worth, man?
I'm like, bro, like, you know, and then it's funny when we'll be watching it with my wife, and I'll be like, and my wife will even be like, man, she's toxic.
Yeah.
I'll be like, man, babe, like, what if you were like that? Like, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy, you know. But a lot of times, like, I feel like that's why culture has embraced it, because there is an embrace of in today's culture of beauty, of taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, taking care of your face, you know, taking care of your physical attributes. And I have nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know, there's surgeries out there that, you know, that take care of everything for
Whatever
you.
floats your boat, girl.
And whatever, yeah, exactly. Whatever floats your boat. I got nothing against it.
Yeah.
I'm not hating on anyone. Like, hey, if that's your cup of tea, drink
for
it.
it.
Like,
Yeah.
go for it. No judgment. But what I'm noticing is that it is creating some beautiful exteriors, you know, some beautiful outside appearances. But then when they get into these relationships, they're simply doing it to be able to take advantage, you know, of that situation, or be able to take advantage of their beauty, you know, regardless if they're toxic or not. They're not worried about, you know, am I going to be a good partner? Where is my self-worth? You know, where is my value? They're just worried about what can I get from this, even if I'm a toxica, even if I am a toxico.
You know what? I say this to everyone, even my own daughter. You could be as beautiful, like the most prettiest person out here.
Yeah.
Right? But like no matter how beautiful you are, if you don't have your morals straight, if you have an ugly personality, you're just gonna look ugly.
Right.
That's like completely ridiculous if you feel like you're just because your looks can help you get away with a lot. And you know, yes, beautiful people have an advantage. But if you're just using that instead of creating like a better personality for yourself, and treating people with respect, you're just ugly.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah. And it should always be something that we should want to strive for, you know, because good relationships in friends, in workplaces, and in romantic relationships, you know, families, marriages, dating, everything, it makes better communities. I always say that, you know, it really does, you know, and wanting to address these toxic traits in our own lives, you know, should be, you know, one of our priorities, you know, should be one of our, like, say, man, you know what, like, if I'm going to get into this next relationship, you know, if I'm in a moment of singleness and I'm going to get into this next relationship, you know, I don't want to just I just don't want them to be better, but I want to find out how I can be better.
Yeah, I think that's really good, because sometimes I hear this like pretty often. People get out of relationships and blame the other person.
Yeah.
They blame the other person, and that's it. I'm
And
looking at them.
especially if you have friends that are have your back.
Yeah.
Yes, girl. Yeah.
Yeah. He was not.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
And
even guys do the same thing. Like, it's not just girls.
Yeah.
Guys, like, yeah, man, you're better off without her.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah.
But like, where's the accountability? What's the role you played for why that relationship ended or why it was so toxic?
Exactly.
You have to take some accountability when it comes to that. Because you can't keep blaming the other person, because guess what? You're going to keep doing the same thing for each relationship.
Exactly.
It's going to keep ending the same way.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I had to personally do. I know in my life, when, I shared about it in my story in one of the first episodes of the podcast is, I am divorced. I'm divorced from my first marriage, and it was, I always tell people though that, I never want to or have anything negative to say, about that relationship, because regardless, it was a lesson that I learned. And at the same time, I never want to take away from the responsibility that I needed to take, and I needed to accept fault for what I did. I needed to accept blame for what I did. And even though it took me down a real bad hole, dark hole at the same time, because I think that there's a healthy balance. I think sometimes that we need to learn. I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. We need to have a healthy balance of accepting responsibility and wanting to work on yourself.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I wanted to take responsibility, but I wanted to just, I ended up just guilting myself, but never doing anything about it. And so when I went into my now marriage, man, you know what? It was, we struggled a lot in the beginning because one of the things that I wanted to just do, I didn't know how that divorce had affected me.
And sometimes you don't realize how much it affects you until your next relationship.
Exactly.
Because you think you're okay.
Because you think you're okay. Exactly. You think that, okay, I'm going to be better.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, okay, I learned from this. I'm going to be better. But it takes a lot more self-awareness.
Yeah.
It really does. And I didn't understand that. I drowned myself in my own emotions, but I never did the underlying work that I needed to do, and I think that's what a lot of people do, is that they drown themselves in like, it was my fault. Yeah, this, or I could have done better. But what is it that you are doing to actually, fix that,
Yeah.
For example, like if you were negative in that relationship, maybe you were the negative person. What are you doing now to fix that?
Yeah. And I recommend, like, to my friends, even like I've done this myself, what happened in a relationship, what role did I play? And I make, my little like goals of how I'm going to fix that or work on that. And then what role did they play?
Yeah.
How did that hurt me? And then moving forward, what am I not going to accept?
Yeah. That's good. Those are some good tips. Because I think there needs to be a better level of self-awareness, because things, possessions, all that, like, I'm not saying it's bad. Having a nice body, it's not bad, taking care of ourselves physically, emotionally, like all that is good. But are we truly preparing ourselves to build a healthy relationship? Because again, I believe it with all my heart. Healthy relationships create healthy families.
Yeah.
And healthy families create healthy communities.
Yeah.
And our children I like to look at it like that, even though children should never be the reason why you stay in a relationship. If there's abuse, if there's things that shouldn't be happening that are going, then those are never, a child is never a reason why. I really believe
agree.
that. I believe that. And
I agree.
And people can argue with me with it as much as they want. Like, I don't care. DM me, whatever,
DM
like
me.
there's certain things that, like, what, if, regardless of your faith, regardless, like if there's things that are there that shouldn't be there, that, then we need to seek help in that. And that should never be a reason why we stay in a toxic relationship, because our kids are going to learn those same patterns.
Yeah. If you're unhappy, if you're not married and you're unhappy, I'd say, separate.
Yeah.
Because
especially if you're unmarried.
And you're already so unhappy, it's going to reflect on how you're parenting.
Yeah.
And if you are married, I would first recommend, go to counseling, go to God, take the steps. but if there's no change, there's still a lot of abuse. I would say, get out of it, because you're creating the next generation. Your kids are seeing that. So guess what? Your kids are going to think that abusive relationship is okay. It's okay to hit someone else. It's pretty sad to see. I work at an early start Head Start program, where, ages from I want to say 4 weeks old to 4-year-old. And you see how it's reflected in their behavior in class. So they do see, and they do apply it in their relationships, their friendships. Even that young.
It really does. It really does. It reflects in us, and that's why I really believe that, again, being toxica, it's funny. We can clown on it.
Make your jokes, all the jokes.
Yeah, we can make
jokes. Get the bumper stickers, all that,
it's funny, but we got to make a conscious decision. We got to make a conscious decision to say, man, you know what? Where am I going to draw the line in this situation?
You have to decide for yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you. Someone can call you out on it. You have to accept it and decide for yourself that I want to make these changes.
100%. 100%. Got to make these changes, because what would you say what do you feel that is one of the biggest things that kind of holds people back?
From moving forward?
From making changes?
From making changes? There's a lot of guilt, because you're going to feel that guilt. You're going to feel that shame. But it's kind of like when you're going to church and you did something very sinful, and you go and you're like, you feel this guilt. And you're like, and it makes you almost not want to go to church. It almost makes you not want to fix that behavior, that guilt. But it's accepting that guilt and then just be like, okay, what am I going to do about it? I think that's one of the first things. And another thing is because it requires work. I think that's another thing. And not knowing where to start. And I would just recommend, start with your parents. If your parents are available, if they're still alive, start with your caregivers, because our attachment styles, our behaviors are from our caregivers.
Or even like if, because I know many people might not have that. They might not have somebody close to them. They might not have any family close to them. I would say, start with yourself, but then also, start with those immediate to you. Like if maybe it's your friend. Maybe it's someone, that you've developed a relationship with. Start by, being a good friend to them.
I think that's really good. Use your resources, whatever is available to you. If it's not your parents, growing up, I had an aunt and uncle who were like my second parents, to me. They were an example of a healthy relationship. They had their arguments and stuff, but that's still, healthy. I think that's something we got to recognize. You can have your arguments, but still be healthy. Another thing is that, you do need to, go to whoever's available to you, whether it's your friends, like, hey, I'm working on this. Can you help me? But even like do some scripts. You could practice like communication with your friends. So,
and it's, opportunities to change. And I there's a quote, and I might be misquoting it, but I love what it says. It says, opportunity comes many times disguised in work clothes and work boots. You know what I mean? And I love that, because you might say opportunity. Well, what is this a change of career? Is this like a money opportunity? What are you talking about? Well, no, opportunity to have a better life. I think sometimes we think of relationships and we think, well, why should I change? Well, if you're truly happy with your life, with how it is, okay, then this obviously isn't for you. But if there's something that in us, I say, man, you know what? There's things that I need to better in my life. I need to better these areas in my life, because I've been going from relationship to relationship. Or I'm in my marriage right now, and you know what? We're constantly fighting because of these different issues. Or I keep losing friends in my life. Nobody stays. I don't understand why. Then it's always a good opportunity for us to say, okay, what can I do better? And if we do what we do, and at that point, nothing changes in our surroundings. Well, then at that point, you know what? Then maybe those friends, those relationships, they just weren't for us. They were meant to just be in a season. And I'm 100% believer in this now. For so long, this was so hard for me to understand. Like, it really was. Like, I was that guy. My first breakup, and it's embarrassing to say, but my first breakup, I was 11 years old.
Dang. First
I was,
heartbreak.
yeah, I was 11 years old and I cried. I cried. Yeah. And because I was that guy that, you know, in Spanish they say, era bien enamorado.
Yeah.
You know, that was me, you know, I would easily get bored of a relationship. I would
Yeah.
easily, like, it was that conquest, you know, like that feeling of conquering, where I was like, in that moment, you know, I would romance and do all this. And so, but then when that happened at 11 years old, man, it just showed me, now I look back and it showed me how, like, you know, how, you know, just, how, you know, the way I took things, you know what I mean? Like, I was so, you know, I don't know, emotional when it came to that, you know, but what I've come to understand, man, is that, man, I forgot the point that I was, what was I talking about? I kind of went into that. We kind of forget though that, you know what, it's okay that certain relationships aren't going to work out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I 100% agree. Sometimes it's, you know, to teach us, I think you mentioned something, I mentioned earlier, it's quite okay to have an argument, have arguments and still have a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, what I mean by that is that it's an opportunity. Like you said, it can be an opportunity to grow, to unlock another level into your relationship.
Yeah.
You know, like whenever you do have conflict with someone and you do have like a secure relationship with them, just look at it as an opportunity to work on your triggers, work on growing as an individual and as a couple.
Yeah.
But when you get to the point where you're like, man, this relationship is not going anywhere, like when you recognize that, I think it's really important to decide to leave that relationship. More for like if you are dating, marriage is a little, you know, different story, but you know, decide, okay, I'm going to have to let this person go.
Yeah.
You know, with my daughter's dad, I didn't let him go like just being pure toxic, because I was allowed to be toxic to him. He let me do that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, hey, sure, be toxic towards me, but he was so accepting of it. And you know,
you're not from Dubai? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, at the time, because I was, you know, I felt superior.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just funny. And, you know, I ended up being in a 2-year relationship with a baby. And it took me a while to realize that I just didn't want to be with him if I allowed myself to be like that towards him.
Yeah.
That's something you got to recognize. You know, maybe you just don't want to be with that person if you're toxic towards them. Maybe you don't want them that bad.
And I think a lot of people do that because they don't want to be in the relationship. They're not really, they're comfortable in the relationship, you know, but they're not really in love in that relationship. You know, it's convenience. It's done out of, and that's what I always see in these reality TV shows, is that there's a convenience factor. You know, and I'm not saying that a relationship shouldn't be, you know, it shouldn't be comfortable to us. You know, we should have a level of you know, if there's no fun, if, you know, there should be fun, there should be laughter, there should be, you know, all that stuff. It's good, you know, but, you know, if that's the only factor, you know, because it's convenience, it'll start to show. And I think that certain personality traits, and I think we kind of have that similar personality trait where it's like, man, you know what, like if this isn't convenient for me, or I'm just here out of pure convenience, you know, and we can start being real nasty towards people, you know, real nasty towards that relationship, because we want to see up until what point, you know, and it's almost a way of like manipulation. Because it's like, well, let me manipulate this situation so that they can leave. And at least I'm not the bad one. Right.
I think I was maybe doing that a little bit too. And he, you know, he was into me. He loved me, but I think looking back, like I kind of question, we're friends now. We co-parent really well.
That's good.
But looking back, and he did, after we broke up, he did like tell me what was hurting him and all that stuff. I wish I knew when we were dating, because I would have considered that, and I also would have let him go a lot sooner. And now, you know, he's with someone who I hope loves him. In a way that I couldn't.
That's good. And that's a healthy perspective, you know, and I'm so glad that you guys are co-parenting in a healthy way, you know, because I think that's huge too. I'm a co-parent as well. So
I mean, it's not perfect. Sometimes we miscommunicate. Sometimes, you know, like you might have some conflict. I had a huge conflict with him during the summer. And it's when I prayed to God the most.
Yeah.
I asked for strength. And it wasn't like a relational thing. It was
Yeah.
more like kind of custody
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that could get nasty.
it can get really nasty. So that got really nasty. We have, our moments. We're not perfect.
Right.
But you have to have a really good relationship with the person you're co-parenting with, because it's really easy to be toxic to that person too.
Yeah.
It's really easy to take your personal feelings and be like, you know what, you can't see them. You can't see your kid.
Yeah.
And I think you have to put your ego to the side and recognize that
No
it's
ego,
not
amigo.
No, because you have to recognize that it's for the child. You need to take your ego out. You need to take your personal feelings out and let that person be a parent to your child.
Yeah. And that's such a, I'm glad you touched on that right now, because I know that there's a lot of people probably that are going to listen, that are listening, me, myself, that are in a co-parenting situation. And healing, when we get out of relationships where children are involved, I think that at that point, I believe that we don't have a choice. I really believe that, if we're single, no children, we move on to relationships, and you decide not to work on yourself, well, then that's on you.
Yeah.
But I believe that once children are involved, man, we have a whole nother level of responsibility, to say, I had some huge things that I needed to change when it came to that, because I was letting a lot of emotions, a lot of things, a lot of guilt, a lot of anger, a lot of things in the beginning dictate how we were co-parenting.
Yeah.
And of course
And
it was
common. That's common.
It's common, very common. And I get it. I hurt that person a lot too. So there was a lot of hurting back and forth, but thank God, with time, but also with working at each other, working on myself, working with things, working with my now spouse, what I mean? Doing the work, and actually understanding that, what, I can't be like this. I can't take offense to everything, because if not, it's not about me. It's about, my daughter. It's about being able to have a healthy relationship, co-parent in a healthy way, because the biggest priority when it comes to that relationship, because that's the thing, like when there's kids and there's the parents, like whether we acknowledge it or not, that's still a relationship.
It's still a relationship. And
it's not romantic.
It's not romantic whatsoever.
It's not romantic. It's not like we're not BFS. We're not going out to coffee together.
It's like a business meeting. You're doing exchanges and stuff, but you have to have I think it's important to have a good relationship with your co-parent, because your kids are seeing that. It's hurting your kid. When you see conflict. I think the happiest, and it's kind of sad for me to hear this or to see that, but the happiest I see my daughter is when me and her dad are having a real conversation. And it kind of sucks, like I've never wanted to have a split home ever. And
I don't think anyone plans that.
No, who's gonna be like, oh, let me just have a split home,
And that's what a lot of people need to be more graceful about. Like nobody plans it.
No one plans it, and life happens sometimes, and it's sad, but I think that's why it's important to have a good co-parenting relationship. And I even tell like my daughter's dad's girlfriend, like, or when I first met her, I was like, I want to get to a point where we could all be in the same room together. We could celebrate birthdays,
100%,
graduations, all that, because
100%.
I was like, if you want to be here long term, and if you love my daughter like how you say you do, we're gonna be able to be in a room together. That hasn't happened yet. I welcome them though. I always welcome them. They're welcome.
That's what healing does. That's what self-awareness does. It really does. It really gives us empathy towards other people. We stop thinking just about ourselves. And I had a big pillar. I want to call it a big victory. That was one of the things that we were able to do one time. It doesn't happen often. I know that as my daughter's getting bigger and she's getting older, I'm hoping that we can have more moments like that, because it's the same thing. Like my daughter, to be able to let her feel, because I don't, what sucks is that the kids, they feel that uncomfortableness.
They do.
They kind of feel that like they don't want to bring any inconvenience, and I remember I think it was for her birthday or something. We had a cake, and we're gonna sing her happy birthday, and she happened to come and drop something off, you know, or something. And I remember like, I'm like, you know, I asked my wife, I'm like, hey, you know, is it cool if like let's ask her if she can sing happy birthday with her, you know. It's she brought the cake actually, because she had a cake and she wanted she brought my daughter and she wanted us to, you know, do the cake with her. And I thought that was real thoughtful. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then so my wife was like, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. And we did, you know. And I'm like, hey, you know what, like I went outside and I'm like, hey, you know, like my daughter was right there. I'm like, hey, come, you know, like we're just gonna sing happy birthday, you don't have to stay for everything. And she and then I was like, would you like that? You know, told my daughter, and she's like, yeah,
they
you
get
know,
excited for that.
yeah,
It's awesome.
then, you know, so she was able to come in and to be able to see my daughter and to be able to see the smile in her face, you know, and that just that's where the work. It's, you see that all the work that you're doing, and I know that there's still a lot of work, but that's where you are able to see all this work that I'm doing to better myself, all this work that I'm doing to get rid of these toxic traits, all this work that I'm doing to, you know, I don't want any more red flags. I want more green flags in my life, is worth it.
I love how you said that. More green flags. We want green flags.
We want more green flags. No more red flags.
No more red flags. That should be a bumper sticker, not soy toxica bumper sticker.
yeah. If she says she's toxica, it's a red flag.
It's a
bro.
red flag.
Nah. No, but yeah, man, this is a fun conversation, man, and I know there's so much that we can get into, you know, but why don't you give some last words to someone, something from the heart, something that maybe is burning within you. Maybe it could be towards dating, maybe it can be towards a single mom, maybe it can be towards friendship, whatever, you know. Why don't you go ahead and look into the camera and just give them some words of encouragement from the heart.
Well, I would say, you know, give yourself a fighting chance. If you take pride in being toxic or you think it's funny, I'm talking to you. I would say give yourself a fighting chance to just have a better life experience by fixing those things that make you think it's okay to have toxic behavior, whether it's using your friends to practice those behaviors with, like, more healthy relationships. And I would say, you know, just give yourself a fighting chance. You don't have to stay that way. You don't have to keep hurting, because it's going to keep reflecting your relationships. Just keep doing whatever you have to do to live a better life, because you honestly don't have to keep hurting.
Yeah, that's good. And then how can they find you on social media?
Well, you can find me on Instagram. I also have TikTok. I don't really use it. On Instagram, it's _DEEMNZ. And that's, you know, just send me a follow, send me a DM if you have more questions. If I said anything that was like relatable, single mom stuff, you know, you're more than welcome to reach out to me.
Yeah. And there's so much that I want to get into. I might have to bring you back for a part 2.
I'll be more than happy
because,
to come
man,
back.
like you're a captain too, right? In the Army Reserves? Lieutenant.
Captain, yeah.
Lieutenant, man. So that's there's so much, man, to and that's why I love, you're the second woman that we bring on to the show. Yeah. So, and that's one thing that we're definitely working on, to bring more women to, you know, I believe in women empowerment. I really do. I believe it. I shout out to my wife, you know, she's a woman entrepreneur too. And I love the energy, you know, that women bring to the workforce, to life, and what they do with the children.
Yes,
I mean, you guys,
I'm telling
you guys are the bomb. I don't know what I would do. I would be lost without my wife, man. You know, I really would.
I agree. I feel like women, we just do the dang thing. Like,
you guys just do
superheroes.
it. Yeah.
Like, I'm surrounded by a lot of single moms, a lot of moms in general. Yeah. They're such rock stars.
Yeah. So shout out to you guys. Stay tuned for our next episode, man. We thank you guys so much. I'm gonna have all her links. Her Instagram, her TikTok. I'm going to have it right there available in the description of this video. And don't forget, we're available. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps us. And don't forget to share it. Share a clip. Share this episode. Share it with your friends, with your family, with your loved one. Follow us on Instagram. We're on TikTok, Facebook. Follow us. Share the love. We're always posting. We're always, sharing different clips on a daily basis. with everyone, with our community. And we just love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for the support. This was Offbeat Podcast. Until next time, let's go.